I used to believe that love stories were meant to last forever, especially mine. James and I had been married for 12 years, and I'd convinced myself we were different from those couples who drifted apart. We met during my final year at Boston University. He was the charming economics professor everyone admired, and I was the ambitious student with dreams of running my own gallery someday. The age gap of 15 years never bothered me. His wisdom and stability were exactly what I craved after growing up with parents whose relationship was a hurricane of emotions. The first few years were everything I'd imagined. We bought a Victorian townhouse in Beacon Hill, hosted dinner parties for his colleagues, and traveled to Europe every summer. I opened my small gallery in Cambridge, and though it struggled at times, James always encouraged me to keep going. "Your eye for beauty is what made me fall in love with you, Eleanor," he'd say, while kissing my forehead. Looking back, I can pinpoint when things began to shift, though at the time, I brushed away my concerns like cobwebs in an abandoned room. It was after his promotion to department chair 3 years ago. The late nights at the university became more frequent. The texts explaining he'd missed dinner again arrived with practiced apology. I'd find myself alone at our favorite restaurants, offering waiters uncomfortable smiles as I canceled the second setting. "The department needs restructuring," he'd explain. His cologne somehow different when he finally slid into bed beside me at midnight. "Dean Matthews has high expectations." I nodded and believed, because that's what you do when trust has been your foundation. When Sarah, my gallery assistant, mentioned seeing James having lunch with a young woman at Cafe Nero, I dismissed it as a student consultation. When he started taking weekend trips to academic conferences I wasn't invited to, I focused on using the time to discover new artists for the gallery. His phone became a fortress, always face down, password changed monthly, disappearing into his pocket whenever I entered a room. Once, I walked into his study to bring him tea, and he slammed his laptop shut with such force that the cup slipped from my hand, shattering against the hardwood floor. "Sorry," he said, helping me clean up. "Just startled me. I was deep in concentration." I convinced myself this was normal for a busy academic. The distant look in his eyes during our conversations, just preoccupation with work. The decreasing frequency of our lovemaking, just the natural evolution of a long-term marriage. The new designer shirts and gym membership, just a harmless midlife recalibration. Then came the credit card statement with charges from Tiffany & Co., a store he'd never entered for me. My birthday had passed months ago, and our anniversary was still weeks away. When I casually mentioned it over breakfast, his explanation came too quickly. "It's a retirement gift for Professor Jenkins," he said, not meeting my eyes. The department pitched in. I called the university the next day to contribute to the gift, only to learn Jenkins wasn't retiring until next year. The lie hung in our house like a poisonous gas, invisible but suffocating. Still, I said nothing. I started checking his credit card statements religiously, noting hotel charges in Cambridge when he claimed to be at conferences in New York. I discovered emails to a realtor about viewing apartments, single-bedroom places that clearly weren't for us. Friends asked if everything was all right. I'd become thinner, quieter, a ghost of the woman who once commanded rooms with her passion for art and life. "Everything's fine," I'd insist, mastering the art of the convincing smile. But at night, I'd trace the empty space on his side of the bed, wondering when exactly I'd become a stranger in my own marriage. I was collecting evidence without admitting to myself what it all meant, building a case file for a truth I wasn't ready to face. Until one rainy Tuesday in April, when ignoring the signs became impossible. That Tuesday began like any other. The spring rain tapped against our bedroom window as I woke alone, James having left early for a faculty breakfast. I lingered in bed longer than usual, listening to the emptiness of our home. Something felt different. Perhaps it was the weight of accumulated suspicions finally becoming too heavy to carry. I called the gallery and told Sarah I wouldn't be in until afternoon. Instead, I wandered through our house, touching the carefully selected artwork on our walls, the antique furniture we'd hunted for in small New England towns. Each piece held a memory of happier times, now tainted with doubt. The decision to look through his office wasn't planned. I'd respected his privacy for months, despite my growing concerns. That invisible line between trust and self-preservation still meant something to me. But when I noticed he'd forgotten his leather planner, the one he guarded religiously, my fingers moved of their own accord. Inside, Between pages of academic appointments and faculty meetings, I found handwritten notes to someone named Mia. Sweet nothings. Inside jokes. Plans for their future. One entry from just last week read, "Told E. About Chicago conference. Meeting M at Harbor View instead. Discuss summer plans." Harbor View was our special place. The luxury hotel on the Cape where we'd spent our honeymoon. He was taking her there, using our memories as a backdrop for his betrayal. My hands trembled as I photographed the pages. I wasn't thinking clearly, operating on some primal instinct for self-protection. When his laptop chimed with an email notification, I knew I should walk away. But something in me had snapped. The woman who made excuses was gone, replaced by someone desperate for the full truth. His password had once been my birthday. Now it was Mio917, September 17th. Her birthday? Their anniversary? My stomach lurched as I gained access. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Emails detailing a relationship spanning 18 months. Photos of a woman barely older than my youngest gallery assistant. She was beautiful in the way youth is always beautiful, untouched by disappointment or compromise. But it was the apartment lease agreement that truly broke me. A 1-bedroom in Back Bay, security deposit paid, move-in date next month. He was leaving me. Had been planning it meticulously while sleeping beside me each night. I printed everything with hands that felt disconnected from my body. The rain had intensified, matching the storm inside me. I sat on our living room floor, surrounded by evidence of my collapsing life, and finally allowed myself to cry. Deep, guttural sobs that left me gasping. When the doorbell rang, I nearly ignored it, but through the peephole, I saw my sister Kate's concerned face. She took one look at me, tear-streaked and hollow, and pushed her way inside. "Eleanor, what happened?" she demanded, gathering papers from the floor. Her expression shifted from concern to fury as she pieced together what I'd discovered. "That absolute bastard," she whispered, pulling me into her arms. For hours, we sat on my kitchen floor while she helped me process the unthinkable. Kate, always my protector since childhood, transformed my anguish into something more productive. A plan. "You can't be here when he comes home," she insisted. "Not tonight. You need space to think clearly. He'll just try to explain it away." She was right. James had always been persuasive. It was part of his charm, his ability to make anyone believe whatever reality he constructed. If I confronted him now, in this raw state, he might convince me to doubt what was undeniable. I packed a small bag while Kate called her husband to let him know I'd be staying with them. As we were leaving, I impulsively grabbed a framed photo from our wedding day. "Leave it," Kate said gently. "You don't need reminders right now." But I tucked it into my bag anyway. I needed to remember who we had been, to understand how we'd reached this point, how the man who'd vowed to cherish me forever had methodically planned his escape while watching me maintain our life together. The last thing I did before walking out was leave the papers, all his secrets, spread across our bed. No note, no explanation, just the evidence of his betrayal waiting for him like a silent accusation. In Kate's car, watching my home disappear in the rain-streaked window, I felt something unexpected beneath the devastation. Relief, the exhaustion of suspicion, of second-guessing my instincts, lifted slightly. The worst had happened. The fear was now reality, and somehow I was still breathing. Kate's guest bedroom became my sanctuary and my prison. For 3 days I barely left the room, watching my phone explode with James's calls and messages. They evolved predictably. Confusion, then anger, then desperate pleas, and finally, pathetic attempts at justification. It wasn't what it looked like, one text read, as if 18 months of deception could be anything other than exactly what it looked like. "She doesn't mean anything," claimed another. A strange comfort to know he was betraying her with these messages too. By the 4th day, when he texted that he was worried sick about me, I finally responded, "I'm safe. Don't contact me again except through my lawyer." Then I blocked his number, social media, email, severing every digital connection we'd ever had. My brother-in-law Michael, an attorney specializing in family law, connected me with Patricia Winters, a divorce lawyer known for her ruthlessness. "You need someone who won't be charmed by him. Michael explained as we sat in Patricia's downtown office. James thinks he can talk his way out of anything. Patricia was everything I wasn't feeling. Confident, focused, uncompromising. While I sat there, still wearing Kate's borrowed clothes, unable to return home for my own, she transformed my personal tragedy into a strategic operation. Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state, she explained, her voice steady and reassuring. The courts will look at duration of marriage, your contributions, his infidelity. The house is jointly owned, correct? And your gallery? Did he invest in that? Questions I should have known the answers to immediately, but didn't. How had I become so disconnected from the business aspects of my own marriage? James had always handled our finances, insisted on it. You focus on your art, Eleanor. I'll take care of the practical matters. His voice echoed in my memory, now sinister rather than protective. I need access to all financial records, Patricia continued. Bank statements, retirement accounts, investments, property deeds, and evidence of the affair. That will matter, especially if there's been financial support of this Mia person. Just hearing her name spoken aloud by someone else made everything more real. I felt lightheaded, gripping the arms of my chair. Eleanor. Patricia leaned forward, her expression softening slightly. This will be difficult, but from what I'm seeing, he's been planning this exit for some time. We need to act quickly to protect your interests. Can you do that? Could I? The woman I'd been 3 days ago would have crumbled, but sitting in that office, I felt something crystallizing inside me, a hardness forming around my wounded heart. Yes, I said, surprising myself with a steadiness in my voice. Tell me what to do. The next weeks passed in a blur of legal paperwork and painful discoveries. James had been siphoning money into a separate account for over a year. My gallery, which had finally started turning a profit, had been used as collateral for a loan I knew nothing about. Our investment portfolio had been quietly restructured. With my inheritance from my grandmother, money meant to be untouchable, moved into high-risk ventures that had lost significant value. This is financial infidelity, Patricia explained. And it's actually good news for us. Judges don't look kindly on this kind of manipulation. Each revelation should have devastated me further, but instead, they fueled something new. Anger. Pure, clarifying anger that burned away the fog of grief and confusion. The man I thought I knew, had built a life with, had planned a future with, had been systematically betraying me in every possible way. At night, alone in Kate's guest room, I'd sometimes take out our wedding photo. The man smiling back at me seemed like a stranger now. Had he ever been real? Had I invented the version of James I thought I loved? Kate found me one night, tracing his face in the photograph. You need to stop torturing yourself, she said, sitting beside me on the bed. This isn't about you failing to see who he really was. It's about him failing to be the man he promised to be. I keep wondering if she knows, I whispered. If Mia knows he's been lying to both of us. If she's just another victim in his game. Kate took my hand. That's not your concern right now. You need to focus on yourself. She was right, of course. But in those quiet moments between legal meetings and tearful realizations, I couldn't help wondering about the other woman. Had James constructed an entirely different persona for her? Were her days now filled with the same devastating revelations as mine? 2 weeks after I'd left our home, Patricia called with news. The bank records show regular payments to an account in Mia Lancaster's name. Large sums, Eleanor. And the apartment lease you found? He's paid 6 months in advance. I closed my eyes, absorbing this fresh wound. He'd been supporting her financially while telling me we needed to be careful with money, that the gallery was draining our resources. What happens now? I asked. Now, Patricia said with grim satisfaction. We use everything we've found, and we make sure James Barrett realizes exactly what he's lost. After a month at Kate's, I knew I couldn't hide forever. My gallery needed me, and more importantly, I needed to reclaim some part of my life that still felt like mine. The first day I returned to work, my hands trembled as I unlocked the door. The space, with its high ceilings and perfect lighting, had always been my sanctuary. Now, it felt like the only piece of my identity James hadn't managed to taint. Sarah greeted me with a cautious hug. We've been worried about you, she said, studying my face. I'd lost weight, and the dark circles under my eyes told stories I wasn't ready to share. "I'm getting divorced," I said simply. The first time I'd stated it so plainly. The words hung in the air between us, strangely liberating. Sarah nodded, unsurprised. What can I do? That question, so straightforward, so practical, became my lifeline in the weeks that followed. I threw myself into work, staying late cataloging new acquisitions, reconnecting with artists, planning exhibitions. The gallery became my fortress, a place where I controlled the narrative. Patricia continued building our case, sending over documents for me to sign with increasing frequency. During our meetings, she'd update me on James's countering tactics, how he'd hired Bradley Thompson, a divorce attorney known for aggressive litigation. He's claiming the gallery was primarily funded through his earnings, Patricia informed me one afternoon. Says your inheritance was voluntarily commingled and shouldn't be protected. The audacity of it sent a cold rage through me. My grandmother had left me that money specifically for my dreams, knowing how much art meant to me. James had encouraged the gallery initially, but once it opened, his support waned, replaced with subtle criticisms about its financial viability. I have the original business plan, I told Patricia, and emails where he explicitly states the gallery is your project, your responsibility. He didn't want his name on any business loans. Patricia smiled, the closest thing to warmth I'd seen from her. That's exactly what we need. His attempts to distance himself from your business then will work against him now. 2 months after leaving our home, I decided it was time to return. Not to stay, but to collect what was truly mine. Patricia advised against going alone, so Kate and Michael accompanied me on a Sunday when James would be at a department event. Walking through the front door felt surreal. Everything looked exactly as I'd left it, yet nothing felt the same. The space no longer recognized me as its owner, or perhaps I no longer recognized myself in it. I moved methodically through rooms, gathering clothes, jewelry, personal papers, and artwork I'd created or inherited. In the study, I found James had cleared the evidence I'd left on the bed. The papers documenting his betrayal neatly filed away in his desk drawer. The organization of his deception struck me as particularly cruel. In our bedroom, in what had been our bedroom, I opened my jewelry box to find several pieces missing. Not the expensive ones James had given me over the years, but the personal ones. My grandmother's pearl earrings, my mother's sapphire ring, items with sentimental rather than monetary value. He's taken my family jewelry, I said, my voice breaking for the first time that day. Kate put her arm around me. We'll add it to the list for Patricia. As we were loading the last of my belongings into Michael's SUV, a sleek black Audi pulled into the driveway. My heart stopped. James stepped out, looking both surprised and irritated to find us there. Behind him, a young woman with honey blonde hair remained in the passenger seat, her expression a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. Mia. She was even more beautiful in person than in the photos I'd found, barely 30, with a delicate elegance that made me suddenly conscious of my own appearance. I hadn't bothered with makeup or styled my hair. I was wearing jeans and one of Kate's oversized sweaters. I looked like exactly what I was, a woman in the middle of losing everything she thought defined her. Eleanor, James said, approaching cautiously. I've been trying to reach you. Through your lawyer only, I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. That was clear. His eyes darted to Kate and Michael, then back to me. We need to talk privately. This situation has gotten out of hand. The audacity of his statement, as if our disintegrating marriage were a simple misunderstanding, ignited something in me. I laughed, a sharp sound that seemed to startle all of us. Out of hand? You've been living a double life for over a year, James. You've hidden money, taken loans against my business, and apparently stolen my family heirlooms. Which part, exactly, is out of hand? He flinched, glancing back at the car where Mia sat watching. I never meant to hurt you. That's the problem with people like you, I said, suddenly feeling calmer than I had in months. You think intentions matter more than actions. They don't. I turned to go, then stopped, facing him one last time. Oh, and tell Mia she's welcome to the life you've constructed. Just remind her that it's built on lies, and eventually, those always collapse. As we drove away, I didn't look back. For the first time since discovering his betrayal, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like someone who might, eventually, survive this. The coffee shop near the courthouse became my regular haunt during the endless legal proceedings. 3 months into the divorce process, I'd grown accustomed to the rhythm of depositions and financial disclosures, the clinical dissection of 12 years together. The baristas knew my order, black coffee, extra hot, and would have it ready when they saw me approach, usually with Patricia's assistant trailing behind, arms full of documents requiring my signature. That Tuesday, I arrived early before our court appearance, settling into my usual corner table to review Patricia's notes one final time. James was contesting everything, despite clear evidence of his financial manipulations. His latest claim, that my emotional instability had driven him to seek comfort elsewhere, had kept me awake the previous night, my mind racing with all the cutting responses I couldn't say in court. I was so absorbed in my thoughts that I didn't notice someone approaching until a shadow fell across my table. Eleanor Barrett? I looked up, expecting another legal courier. Instead, I found myself staring at a woman about my age, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, expensive sunglasses perched on top of her head. Something about her seemed vaguely familiar, though I couldn't place her. "Yes?" I replied cautiously. "I'm Rebecca Lancaster," she said, her voice tense. "Mia's sister." My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. Of all the scenarios I'd imagined for today, this wasn't one of them. "May I sit?" she asked, not waiting for an answer before sliding into the chair opposite me. "I know this is unexpected, but I need to speak with you." I nodded, suddenly speechless. What could this woman possibly want from me? "I believe my sister is making a terrible mistake with James," she said, removing her sunglasses completely and setting them on the table. Her eyes, unlike Mia's blue ones I'd glimpsed briefly in the car, were a deep brown, direct and unflinching. "And I think you and I might be able to help each other." For a moment, I wondered if this was some elaborate trap set by James, a way to get me to say something that could be used against me. But the genuine concern in Rebecca's expression seemed impossible to fake. "How exactly would that work?" I asked. "Mia doesn't know I'm here," she continued, lowering her voice. "She'd be furious if she found out, but things aren't adding up. James told her you were separated for over a year before they met, that you knew about their relationship and had already moved on." A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "Of course he did. She believed him because she wanted to," Rebecca said, a hint of frustration in her voice. "Mia has always been susceptible to charm, especially from older, established men." She hesitated. "But recently, she's been finding discrepancies in his stories. And then there's the money issue." I leaned forward. "What money issue?" James promised to help her start an interior design business. That's her background. She worked for a firm in New York before moving to Boston. He convinced her to quit her job, saying he'd provide startup capital. But the money never materialized. Now he's telling her it's tied up in the divorce proceedings, that you're vindictively blocking their future. The familiar pattern made my stomach clench. James, making grand promises he never intended to keep, using others' dreams as leverage. I'd fallen for the same manipulations with my gallery. "I have access to some financial information that might interest you," I said carefully. "But I'm not sure what you're asking of me." Rebecca pulled out her phone, swiping to find something. "I want the truth. Mia deserves to know who she's really involved with, regardless of her choices afterward." She pushed the phone toward me. "And I thought you might want to know about this." On the screen was a text conversation between Mia and someone saved as Jay. My eyes caught on a message from 3 weeks ago. "Need to retrieve E's jewelry from safe deposit box before court freezes assets. Can you meet at the bank tomorrow? We'll add you as authorized user. My grandmother's pearls. My mother's ring. The missing pieces that had disappeared from my jewelry box." "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Because I don't think Mia understands what she's being pulled into," Rebecca replied, "and because it's the right thing to do." We talked for nearly an hour, exchanging information, me sharing documentation of James's financial deceptions, Rebecca revealing text messages showing how he'd manipulated her sister with the same tactics he'd once used on me. It was like looking into a distorted mirror of my past, seeing another woman being led down the same treacherous path. "What will you do with this information?" I asked as Rebecca prepared to leave. Try to wake my sister up, she said with a grim smile. She's stubborn, but she's not stupid. Seeing the pattern might be enough. She paused. And if you could keep me informed about the safe deposit box situation, I'll have my lawyer subpoena the records immediately, I promised. As she walked away, I felt a strange sense of solidarity with this woman I'd just met, both of us trying to protect someone from James's destructive influence, though for different reasons. For the first time, I saw Mia not as my replacement or my enemy, but as another casualty in James's ongoing campaign of deception. When Patricia arrived 15 minutes later, I had a new determination in my voice as I explained what I'd learned. We need to move quickly, I told her. And I think I finally understand what I'm fighting for. Not just my financial security or the gallery, but to break a pattern that will only claim more victims if we don't stop it now. The courthouse steps were slick with November rain as I made my way inside, clutching my umbrella and the leather portfolio containing what Patricia called our nuclear option. 6 months into the divorce proceedings, James had grown increasingly desperate, employing delay tactics and filing motions to suppress evidence of his financial manipulations. Today's hearing would determine whether the safe deposit box contents, recovered through court order 2 weeks earlier, would be admissible. I spotted James and his attorney in the hallway outside the courtroom. He'd lost weight, his once immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. The expensive suits now hung loosely on his frame, and gray had crept further into his temples. He avoided my gaze, but his attorney, Bradley Thompson, with his shark-like smile, nodded tersely in my direction. Patricia squeezed my arm reassuringly. Remember, no matter what they say in there, we have the documentation. Judge Harmon has reviewed the financial records. She knows what he did. I nodded, my mouth dry. Despite the strength I'd found in recent months, being in James's presence still triggered a physical response, a tightening in my chest, a flutter of anxiety, not from love or longing, but from the body's memory of betrayal. As we entered the courtroom, I noticed a familiar figure already seated in the gallery, Rebecca Lancaster, looking professional in a charcoal blazer. She met my eyes briefly, giving me a subtle nod. We hadn't spoken since our coffee shop meeting, but her presence suggested something important had happened. The hearing proceeded with the tedious formality of legal proceedings, attorneys citing precedents, the judge asking clarifying questions. James's lawyer argued that the safe deposit box was opened before our separation, and therefore its contents were irrelevant to current proceedings. Patricia countered by presenting bank records showing James had accessed the box multiple times after I'd left, removing items that were clearly listed in my grandmother's will as my separate property. Furthermore, Your Honor, Patricia continued, we have evidence that Mr. Barrett intended to transfer these heirlooms to a third party, specifically to Mia Lancaster, with whom he has been conducting an extramarital relationship. At the mention of Mia's name, a murmur ran through the courtroom. James visibly stiffened, turning to whisper urgently to his attorney. I followed his gaze to the back of the room, where the doors had just opened. Mia stood there, pale but composed, her eyes fixed on James. Unlike our brief encounter months ago, she now looked directly at me, her expression not hostile but resolute. She moved forward, taking a seat beside her sister. Judge Harmon ruled quickly in our favor, determining that the jewelry would be immediately returned to me and that James's attempt to conceal assets would be considered in the final settlement. As the hearing concluded, I gathered my things, feeling a weight lifting, not just from the victory, but from seeing James's carefully constructed facade continuing to crumble. In the hallway, Patricia was pulled aside by Thompson, the two attorneys engaging in heated whispers. James approached me, his face a mask of controlled desperation. "Eleanor, please," he said, lowering his voice. "This has gone far enough. I've made mistakes, but destroying everything I've worked for won't change that." "You're right," I replied calmly. "Nothing will change what you did. But this isn't about punishment, James. It's about consequences." His expression hardened. "You have no idea what you're doing. My career, my reputation, are both built on lies," I finished for him. "Just like our marriage." Before he could respond, Mia appeared beside us, her sister hovering protectively nearby. "I need to speak with both of you," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Privately." James blanched. Mia, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time, she interrupted. Because I'm done being manipulated by you. We found an empty conference room down the hall. The moment the door closed, Mia placed a folder on the table. I found these in your desk drawer last week, she said to James. Care to explain why you have falsified investment statements with my name on them? James's face drained of color. Those are preliminary projections for your business. I told you I was working on securing funding. They're forgeries, Mia cut in. I showed them to my former boss in New York. The company doesn't even exist. She turned to me. Did you know he's been telling me that my startup capital was tied up in property investments? That once the divorce was finalized, we'd have access to substantial returns? I shook my head. The only property investments were in my name, with my inheritance, which he leveraged without my knowledge. Mia's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained firm. I believed everything. That you were the villain in his story. That you were vindictively holding on to money that was rightfully his. She laughed bitterly. He even had me convinced you were unstable, that restraining orders might be necessary. The revelation stunned me. He was planning to file a restraining order against me. No, Mia said, her gaze returning to James. He was setting up a narrative where you might file one against me, creating a paper trail of my concerning behavior toward you. Texts I supposedly sent, emails, all fabricated. James stepped forward, desperation written across his features. Mia, you're overreacting. Those were just precautionary measures in case I discovered you've been playing us both, she finished. Or in case I found out about Vanessa. The name hung in the air between us. James went completely still. Who is Vanessa? I asked. Mia pulled out her phone, bringing up an email chain. His graduate student, 24 years old. They've been meeting at the Harbor View, too. She looked at me. Sound familiar? The pattern was so clear now, so predictable it would have been almost comical if it weren't so devastating. James Barrett, brilliant academic, charming husband, master manipulator, had been running the same script with different women for years, possibly decades. I filed a complaint with the University Ethics Committee this morning, Mia continued, her eyes never leaving James's face. With evidence of your relationship with a student under your direct supervision. James lunged for her phone, but Rebecca, who had silently entered the room, stepped between them. That would be a very poor decision, she said coldly. I watched as James, the man I once believed held all the power, all the answers, crumbled before my eyes, realizing that his carefully constructed world of lies was collapsing around him. In that moment, standing beside two women who had also been deceived by him, I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction or vindication, but a profound sense of release. The truth, finally unleashed, was doing what I alone could not, breaking the spell he had cast over all of us.